days. Tickets available now.
Sea Cruises, Red Building.
Those are fire, but you can see the city, see the Space Needle system. It's all light area, so they a little bit of Seattle, Waterfront, fun facts, some of the history about Elliott Bay and what goes on here. And there's Encore.
All right, this is the last call. So after 122 in just about probably 30 seconds here, we're not going to be checking in or boarding any longer for the 125 cruise. So if you guys are here for that one but you miss it, then don't worry, you can get on the 2 o'clock or one of our later ones today. For the 2 o'clock, we're gonna start the check-in process about 1:30. So if you guys are already here, then just hang out and we'll get you taken care of soon.
It is not too late to purchase tickets today. You can head into our reservation center in the red building. Underneath the blue awning, it says Argosy Cruises. In there, they can get you tickets or redeem your city pass for a time. I have 2 p.m. If it's possible to get those back.
Here's more security.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
You're all set.
is the Blue Angels that you're seeing. It is not the Blue Angels, but it's somebody else super cool. And there's an acrobatic show going on right now. The Blue Angels start at 3 o'clock. There's an air show that's going to happen over Lake Washington, just to the east of here. And it happens every year. It's part of our Seafair season. It's the end of our Seafair season where the hydros play, but I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. Our tour guides will tell you all about that. And Ronique, that you heard from, is your tour guide. She'll be up here in just a couple minutes once it's time to get underway, but I just saw a couple people ask me as I was passing by them on the way up, is that the Blue Angels? Not the Blue Angels yet. They're at 3 o'clock. So wherever you're at, if you're somewhere around downtown, just stop and look up at 3 o'clock and you'll see and hear the Blue Angels. So thought I'd clarify that for everybody. And greeting you as you came aboard was Lars. In just a minute, once we know we have everybody on board, he'll start the process of pulling the ramp from the vessel, untying us, and once he has us free of our lines and he's safely on board, you'll see him around the vessel. And if you have any questions, needs, or concerns, feel free to flag him down. And then, of course, your bartenders, one of which will be mobile, meaning they'll be walking around the cocktails. Pretty cool. They did not give me information on who is flying. It's just an acrobatic air show, so forgive me for that. But they are loud. But your bartenders today are M, Julia, and then of course Lars, and Josh just came on with us. He will be
And I moved here to Seattle in 1986, grew up in Southern California, Oregon, Eastern Washington, so all along the West Coast. Absolutely love Seattle, and I love sharing all the fun things about our city here in Seattle. So now that you know a little bit about me, I'd love to get to know you all. So how many others do we have from the West Coast here? California, Oregon, Washington? Quite a few locals, all right, fantastic, welcome aboard. What about East Coast visitors? Do we have any East Coast visitors? All right, definitely, yes, very emphatic yes. And what about people visiting from the southern part of the U.S. or the Southwest? Any visitors there? All right, a couple of you, fantastic. What about Midwest? We usually have a couple of Midwesterners on board. All right. We'll talk a little bit later about our connection to the Midwest as well. What about neighbors to the north? Alaska, Canada? Anybody from those? Yeah, welcome. And last but not least, what about international visitors? Anybody here from international? Where are you from internationally? Shout it out. Ukraine, I heard. Where else? UK. Not Ukraine. Oh, different place. Where else? Nobody else from international waters? Shout it out. Germany, all right, fantastic. Well, wherever you're from, thank you so much for joining us today. You are on the Spirit of Seattle, and we have just pulled out of our home dock here at Pier 55. So we've actually been operating here for quite a long time. If you look off to the left, you're going to see one of our sister ships, the Good Time 2 there. We have been operating since 1949 out of Pier 55, and we started back in 1949 with Captain Lynn Campbell, who had the Spring Street water taxi. It was a water taxi service that left here, went all the way across over to the left, over to the Kitsap Peninsula. Now he discovered he really had a lot of people staying on board long after they would arrive, and that's because he was a very avid storyteller. He knew a lot about the area. People like to stay on the boat long after they arrive, so it gave him an idea for a tour service. So eventually Spring Street Water Taxi morphed into Argosy Cruises, which you are now a part of. So a little bit of nautical terms before we get started. Off to the right hand side, right here, is going to be starboard or right. Left hand side of the boat is port or left. The front of the boat is bow, you bow to the front, and the back of the boat is going to be the stern. So if you hear me mentioning any of those terms, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Of course, I'll be throwing out right and left as well. But first, off to our starboard or right side, we have this green building here with the white trimmed windows. That is going to be our Seattle Aquarium. How many of you all have been to the aquarium? Show of hands. A few of you. Okay. I know it's a gorgeous day. You probably don't want to be hanging out inside, but I bet you they have air conditioning in their intent. Also, it's there that you're going to see some of our Pacific Northwest wildlife, things that actually live here in our marine waters that we don't always get to see. Now, some of those animals include the giant Pacific octopus, the largest octopus species in the world. They get to be absolutely massive. You could drape a tentacle over each side of this ship. That's how big they get to be. Of course, if you time it right, you can go during feeding time. And also you can see those sea otters, cutest animals on the planet. Now the sea otters have the most hair of any animal on the planet. They have about 1 million hairs per square inch on their body. Which keeps them really fluffy, keeps them warm, and helps them float. That's why all those things are very cute. As well as one of the things that they like to do in the food is they want to their food with something else. And there's one of the things that they use their bodies definitely lots of animals to check out at that aquarium and lots of other Northwest marine life there as well. Definitely worth a visit. That Seattle Aquarium is not really a kind of a show aquarium. It's definitely a research facility. One of the things with aquarium there is we actually release those scientific octopus into our waters during breeding time to increase the population of them here in the Elliott Bay West. That whole area between the construction frame and the road is including the backside of the Place Market. Now, definitely worth checking out the Place Market. It was the oldest continuing line farming market in the country. Started in 1909 with the producers there selling their produce to different people in the area. Now, of course, there's about 85 stories about farmers selling their goods there, as well as over 200 artists selling their really individual creative crafts and creations there. So lots of things to see, as well as the scientists and Starbucks. The very first Starbucks was there, but it burned down in the airport. And it's the only chain place in the freeway market that original Starbucks that was like that. Starbucks, of course. There's many other cafes around there. If you decide to go underground in the market, I definitely recommend it. It's kind of a series of ramps and stairs and levels. There's lots of different shops in there. There's a couple independent booksellers. There's a really fun Italian grocery store in there. David Dozen is one of my favorite shops in there. It's about $6 for $1. You can stand in line and watch them making those donuts. You can also visit the second side of the journey's attraction trail, which is going to be the John Wall. That is actually in the valley up above our street over there. Big wall, very close to Puget. Started when Peter Owen didn't want to put their boat underneath the sea. So what they did is they sent it outside. Well, over time, lots of them added up and it started affecting the actual infrastructure of the building. We decided to clean it for one complete and we were adding 7 gallons as well. Pretty gross, but it filled up right away. So if you want to look at yourself in the outside. Now speaking of colorful, off to our right hand side we have the Norwegian Encore, which is beautiful, painted hull here. Each Norwegian cruise line vessel has a unique hull painted by them in for our cruise ships here. Are opting to stay in the water and can't get any closer to your cruise ship than the Edgewater Hotel. That hotel is built in 1960 for the World's Fair. The World's Fair is pretty lovely day. There's really not a cloud in the sky. It's pretty amazing. So the Space Needle has a different colored top. If you've been to Seattle before, you might not recognize that top color. That's a new addition. That's because the Space Needle and the World's Fair just celebrated its 60th anniversary a couple months ago. And one way to commemorate that is they decided to paint that top color the original color that it used to be, which is called Galaxy Gold. Now, the Space Needle, of course, was built for that World's Fair in 1962, and 1962 had a lot of people thinking about space, technology, the future. So a lot of the colors of the Space Needle at that time reflected the theme of space. So Galaxy Gold was one color, Orbital Olive was one color, as well as Re-Entry Red. So you can see a theme here, right? It looks very George Jetson-like, that building, but at the time in 1962, a lot of people thought, oh, a lot of the buildings are going to look like that in the 21st century. Well, we've made it to the 21st century, and not a lot of buildings look like the Space Needle. That's probably because it's not a very useful building, even though it's pretty cool looking. It only has about 5 working floors. Now, it is set into about 30 feet of concrete, and it has about a 5-foot center of gravity. So it is considered the safest building to be at in Seattle should anything happen. It's built to withstand over a 9-point earthquake and over 200-mile-an-hour winds, which, fingers crossed, we don't have either of those happening. But definitely worth checking out. On a day like today, you can see kind of an epic view of our downtown skyline from the top of the Space Needle. Now, at the 500-foot level, it's a glass floor that revolves really slowly. You can look down through your feet to the street below, 500 feet if you so choose. Could be really exciting or totally terrifying depending on how you feel about heights. I will stay here on the boat, but feel free to do that if you're so inclined. Now back to our waters here. We have a lot of activity. We have a really cool 3-masted sailboat behind us that's kind of sailing to our stern there. A lot of smaller sailboats, of course, as well. Lots of activity on the water. This is a Seafair weekend, of course, so there's a lot of activities with planes overhead, people out on the water. We have our hydroplane races this weekend as well. But the water we're in now is pretty deep. Now you can see we are very close to the downtown skyline of Seattle. Now when we started today, we were in about kind of 30 to 50 feet of water in our slip. Now this average depth we're in right now is closer to 400 to 600 feet deep. Really deep for not very far out away from our city, and that's because we are carved by glaciers here. 17,000 years ago, the Vashon Glacier moved through here, carving very, very deep valleys here that filled up with water, and that is why the water is so deep here. Now it's also really cold. Not a lot of people swim in these waters because the average temperature is about 45 to 52 degrees. This time of year we like to swim in our lakes, which gets a lot warmer. Here the water is so cold because it's fed by the Pacific Ocean. Now the Pacific Ocean drains into here through the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Georgia Strait, bringing with it very cold water and very nutrient-rich water, feeding a lot of the wildlife in our area. Now the one thing I want to point out off to the right-hand side there is that very tip of land here that's just kind of disappearing. That is going to be Alki Point. Alki Point is all part of West Seattle, which is this landmass offshore, right? It is not an island. It's connected to the mainland. You can head over there by way of car, or the West Seattle water taxi will drop you off right there. But West Seattle is a really neat area. But that Alki Point is also kind of a place in history for us. It is the site of the first non-native white settlers that arrived here to our region. They arrived in the 1850s, settled on that bit of land out there, exposed to the elements in November. Now that party was called the Denny Party. They traveled by way of wagon through the Oregon Trail. And when they arrived here in November, I'm pretty sure the weather wasn't like it is today. And they were very exposed to the elements. Now they were not having a great time. They had a lot of mishaps happen. They had a lot of unfortunate accidents along the way. And when they got here, they had the help, luckily, of some local people that had lived here for thousands of years, and their leader, who was their tribal leader. Now those local people are known as the very first people of Seattle. They are called the Duwamish people, and their tribal leader, or chief, Chief Self. Now the people and the chief really helped them by showing them where to fish, which trees to cut down, but more importantly, they suggested that they move across the bay over to the left and settle in an area that was more protected and had access to better resources, which they did. Now, as a way to say thank you, they were very grateful for the help of the Duwamish people and their chief, and they wanted to honor them by naming the city after them. But Chief Self was a little bit difficult for them to say, and even my pronunciation is not correct. The language of that tribe and people is called the Shutseed. It's very difficult to pronounce unless you're raised to speak it. And so they changed the chief's name from Chief Self to Chief Seattle, and that is how we got our name as a city. We are named after the chief and tribal leader of the Duwamish and Suquamish people. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the Duwamish people, over in West Seattle is the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center, which is a gorgeous building, but more importantly over there is a lot of that really rich history about the Duwamish people and their connection to this area. Now, they still live here today, so definitely worth checking out that Longhouse. And if you want to venture over to West Seattle, you can do so by the West Seattle Water Taxi, which is a vessel that you'll see out here on our water. It has a flat blue roof, and it heads from the downtown region just a little bit south of the ferry terminal there, heading over here, and it will land right about on our right hand side there, right about where that tug is kind of crossing or so. Once you're there, you can rent kayaks, you can rent bikes, you can hop on your bikes and you can take a ride down around that corner there off to the right, and you can visit Alki Beach. It's our only sandy beach here in Seattle, so if you feel like you want kind of a beach vibe, that's a perfect place to go. There's a lot of restaurants down there and shops. You'll see people rollerblading and roller skating, and if you're feeling brave enough, you can dip your toes in this cold Puget Sound waters here. Now, I mentioned the waters and the connection to the Pacific Ocean, and now the water here with all of that rich plant life feeds some of the animals here. Now, keep your eyes open. We've been seeing harbor porpoises out in the water lately, as well as harbor seals, as well as the occasional California sea lion, and also the things that fly over here, things like bald eagles, osprey, Caspian terns, all of those fish-loving birds that hang out here on the waters. So definitely lots to see. Of course, we're known for our orca species here in Seattle. We have our JK, like this double-crested cormorant that's flying by right now. Off to the right, that very large dark bird there. We have double-crested cormorants and pelagic cormorants hanging out down here. They love fish, as well as some of those other species I mentioned earlier. But off to the right here, Vigorous Shipyards has their dry dock. So you can see in their very first dry dock here with the number 12 on the side, that's going to be one of our Washington State ferries there. It's got that kind of tent in the front to prevent any debris from going into the water. Now, the vessel to the left that's propped up there, up on those blocks that has a red hull, that is a guided missile cruiser. That's a Navy vessel. So these are really unique vessels that you don't get to see every day, that's for sure. How these dry docks work is the sides are actually hollow. Now, this particular Cape St. George one to our right, the guided missile cruiser, that one's been in there for over a year. So that one we haven't seen drop into the water, but the wing walls on the side are hollow. They pull a lever, those sides fill with water, the whole dry dock drops into the water. Then a tugboat, kind of similar to what we just saw, the Western Tug, will steer a vessel in, line it up on the keel blocks. Then they'll drain the water out of the sides, and the whole dry dock lifts up with the vessel inside. So it sounds like a quick process, but it actually takes several hours. But this is the way they can get these vessels up and out of the water to do any kind of painting, repairs, welding, inspection of that hull area. Because as you know, if that hull is in the water, you don't have access to it. Now, off to the right-hand side as well, we also have some wildlife, and this is really exciting for us here at Argosy. But if you look on this security fence where this giant orange buoy is, just to the left, a couple of black floaties, you're going to see a California sea lion. Now, this is a sea lion and not a seal. Sea lions are eared, so this one has ears. We haven't seen one of these for months, so this is really exciting. This one's pretty big, just kind of hanging out on its floaty there. You can't miss it. Really close to the boat here off to the right-hand side. Now, the California sea lions we get here, they visit at different times of the year. We haven't had any visiting for quite a while, but we typically get males here. The males that come up here are looking to do one thing, and that is consume a lot of our salmon. We have about 5 species of salmon of the 6 species here in our waters, and that's one of their favorite things to eat. Now, the males come up here, gorge up on that salmon so they can get big and strong and go back down to their breeding grounds where they can compete for Beachmaster status. Now, this one's actually not very big. These male sea lions actually get to be about 800 pounds or more, and they can be 7 to 8 feet long. So they're quite huge when they're full grown and kind of at their biggest there. Now, you might see these California sea lions in the water with their flipper up. They do that a lot, and they do that to regulate their body temperature as well as rest. Also, what they do to rest is jump up on that security gate buoy of Vigorous Shipyards. That's definitely one of their favorite places to hang out. Now, as we cruise along here, we have this kind of pier here with the yellow spool at the end there. That is going to be one of our gas stations. That is Maxim Petroleum. It's a gas station we have here on the water. So a lot of our smaller, medium vessels, even some as big as those Washington State ferries, will go over there and fuel up. So the ship you're on today, the Spirit of Seattle, that is also where we get our fuel as well. Now, some of these larger vessels, like those container ships and cruise ships, are far too big to take off there. What happens is they have their fuel taken out to the point by way of bunker barge. And bunker barges are just ahead of us on the right. There are these black coal barges that you see in the water with all that black piping on top. The one just directly to our right ahead of us has that tugboat tucked up against it. These are double hull barges. Elliott Bay and Puget Sound is a mix of salt and freshwater. That freshwater of the Norwegian River mixes with the Pacific Ocean, so there's kind of a lot of mixture of water here. This water right now is island off to our right. It's very flat with all of our industrial companies down here. It's known as Harbor Island. It is a man-made ocean in our hills. So you might have been walking around Seattle, that was one of the water hills. So if you see flat places like this, it like to be really easy. Ship and bring them over just as you see them now, rolling them off onto the dock. And as you can see, they are on a set of wheels as we make our way down. You can see that claw hanging down there and a set of cables up above that. And then a little glass cabin kind of in the very center underneath there where one operator will sit operating this gantry. Now it's a very coveted position. It pays about a 6-figure salary. So you do have to be a senior member of the longshoremen to apply for the position, which takes about 6 years or more. Once you apply, you are one of many that applies, and you are put into a lottery. If your name gets drawn, then they get to interview, and your interview process takes place up on top of the crane. So we want to make sure that you're okay with heights, because you are going to be working from that little glass box for hours at a time. Now they do tend to work in shorter shifts, working in those glass boxes, and then coming down to the shore and doing stuff on the docks here and going back up. Now feel free to wave as we make our way down. Everybody is very friendly here on the waterfront. And all these containers we're looking at, you can see there's some on the back of trucks, and you might think that these also look a little bit like containers that you have, we're getting up on. Feel free to wave. You might think that these look familiar. Containers you've seen on trains or backup trucks or ships, they are all the same. They're called intermodal shipping containers. There are 3 sizes, 20 foot, 40 foot, and 45 foot. Now these sizes are
very different. In the 1950s, a truck driver had a great idea of driving his truck and trailer onto a ship instead of offloading the goods before it was on the ship, and that really revolutionized the industry. And then in the 60s, those sizes became regulated and invented. So you can see there's a freighter up in these little glass cabins. There's 3 of them right off to our right-hand side of there. So you can see they're locking onto these containers. They stack these a little bit like Legos. So you can see there's some writing on the side. The writing on the side is denotes the shipping company and not really what's inside. You can see they are loading these containers here. Now for all the containers that we see on our right, there's more than that below. More than half are stored below for stability. And that's for a very good reason. Sometimes when these container ships are moving all over the world, of course, they are prone to the wakes and waves of other vessels out on the water, as well as weather. And sometimes these containers will fall off. Built in 1914, the tallest high-rise at the time here in Seattle, until the Space Needle was built in 1962. It's also the tallest high-rise west of the Mississippi River. Now it's just the coolest apartment. That top pyramid section is a luxury apartment. When it came up for lease last year, it went for $17,000 a month. Now the current tenant was able to sneak in there for about $13,000 to $14,000 a month. But you can take a visit if you like to the speakeasy style bar that's there on the 35th floor. About $20 will give you an antique ride or a ride in an antique elevator with a real person. Up to that 35th floor bar that has 1920s prohibition style cocktails and some lights. We do have limited hours, so we'll check the schedule. Another fun thing in Seattle that's a must-see, if you ask me, is hopping on one of our Washington State piers. We have the Walla off to our right, this very large white vessel. This one you can take all the way over to Bainbridge Island on your left-hand side, and as you look to the left, you can see another Washington State ferry coming into the downtown area. Now, Bainbridge Island is about a 35-minute ferry ride for $15. You don't need your car, you just take a journey over there. Once you step off onto the ferry dock in Bainbridge Island, about a 10-minute walk will take you to the downtown area of Winslow. You can visit many of the shops there. They have a lot of great restaurants as well as breweries, wineries, 2 free museums over there. There's some nature areas over there. You can hop on the bus and explore those, as well as Mora Ice Cream, which is famous for its ice cream. And one of my favorite pizza places is over there. It's called Puget, which is a real Italian wood-fired pizza. So definitely lots to check out here in Seattle this weekend. Not a shortage of things to do. But with that, I have something I need to do, which is go downstairs and tie up the boat, so you all can enjoy the rest of your day here in Seattle. I've been Renee. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I will be the last face you see, and thanks so much for joining us here in Seattle this weekend.
Well, thank you, Ronique. How about a round of applause for Ronique? She just did a fantastic job, and she is so knowledgeable and has so many interesting things to talk about. She really goes that extra mile to find things that she wants to do, find interesting things with you. So as you make your way off the boat, feel free to let her know how to enjoy her team in a special way. Speaking of talk there for a second, you will be making your way down by way of the aft stairwell. We're going to close the bow stairwell. And please know that. And we've got a couple small favors for you as you're making your way down. If you don't mind depositing any glassware at the bar, or any, wrappers, beverages, anything like that. If you move chairs around, which we don't mind at all either, if you don't mind, you move back with it then and, close out those bar caps. Thank the bartenders, of course. They work very, very hard. And I'm just gonna let you get those last photos as I call into the slip, and then I'll have some party words for you once we're basic here back in the slip. We'll do that. So come on, guys. she's so fun to learn with. She's